I should have that ready. My friend here, Tyler Vela, who I like in a lot of ways, and I don't like what he believes, of course, says this. If you think 2 Peter 3:4-6 is referring to anyone who disagrees with your understanding of the Bible, then you're showing you don't actually respect the Bible enough to even try to properly exegete it. If you treat it like a wax nose, why should I accept this as the revelation of God? I'm not sure if he's criticizing me. I have talked about this verse recently. It's been in my live stream when I was talking about these verses, or at least the surrounding context of these verses. But it's okay if he doesn't. If he wasn't talking about me, I think it's worth talking about. So I think this is talking. So someone might ask, because I have a young Earth creationist interpretation, which I mentioned in my exegesis, my commentary on this. Not really exegesis. It depends on how you define the term. My interpretation of this text. For this, they willfully forget. So anyone who no longer believes that God created the world, and my interpretation is that this text is suggesting that Peter is operating under the understanding that the same world which God created. I mean, if I take context seriously, and we believe, and even old Earth creationists suggest that the creation account is talking about the creation of the universe, or at least the Earth, and then speaking back, I mean, depending on your timeline, but almost everyone says it's the creation of everything. Although some people like John Walton say it's not necessarily speaking to ex nihilo, it's talking about the formation of things, like God being a workman, forming things into their proper use. But even people who take that particular standard still think it's suggesting that God is the source of everything, for whatever the reason is for that. How they get there, I'm not sure necessarily. But I think it's probably, maybe I'm just reading into it, but it seems to me, reading the text, it's the same world that God created that's being flooded, and which is then connected to final judgment, which basically every Christian believes God's going to judge the entire earth, as we understand the earth as a globe, a huge spinning ball in space. And if we believe that God created it, it's the whole world which he created, and even if it's not ex nihilo. So Peter connects that which God created for man, the environment, and that Jesus is going to judge the entire earth, because his mission was to call back all nations which were separated at Babel, which are all of humans, according to the text, presumably, classically, historically, people believe that. That's why we don't question whether races of men, as the gospel went out to the entire world, especially in the Great Awakening periods and such and whatnot, and in the Reformation, we discovered peoples we didn't know existed in certain cases, that they're actually sons of Adam. It's all humans. So, but ultimately, at the end of the day, who is being judged here? I would argue, who is really in view? Well, I'm not saying this is condemning old Earth creationists per se. It's really condemning those who are denying that God's going to judge the world. I just think an old Earth interpretation is kind of strained. We just take the text in its context regarding what was created and how Peter is connecting it textually. The world that was in the Genesis account that was flooded is that world which God created, which is that world that God will judge. But if you deny a universal flood, I don't think it's not condemning those people. It's condemning people that deny God judges and is going to judge the entire world, which, of course, old Earth creationists don't deny. Either that God created everything, or that God will judge the entire earth. I just think it's if you're not, as long as you're not denying that God judges and he is the judge and will judge the entire world, this text isn't condemning you. So I just think the older interpretation is strained, but I don't think it's condemning old Earth creation, in my view, just to be clear, in the sense that the ultimate focus is the reality of the judgment of God that's coming, like it came upon the Noachian world. So I'm not so stupid as some young Earth creationists to think old Earth creationists aren't Christians. They're just wrong. But, they think I'm stupid, so it doesn't really matter. I just think a lot of theology gets messed up when you start deciding when the Bible is being literal or not, and then mixing in kind of, it's like, did God create the entire globe even though Moses didn't know there was a globe? I think most Christians are going to read it that way. We're going to say because Moses only knew about the ancient Near East, he couldn't have been talking about the whole entire world when he talks about God creating the world, because he can only be talking about what he knew about. That seems stupid, and it's why I don't think old Earth creationists would say that. But then that kind of undermines the whole project of, oh, the Earth just means arid, so he's not talking about everything. I think he's talking about that which he's just talking about that God created for man, which is the entire Earth, obviously. So whatever that is, doesn't matter that he didn't know about Africa or whatever that looks like, depending on your model of Earth geological history. So anyway, for what that's worth.